Perfect. I see that we have a lot of enthusiastic people here today and hopefully online as well. And on behalf of DAIN Studios, I would like to wish you all warmly welcome. I'm Niina Hagman. I'm Director of Data and AI Transformation Practice at DAIN Studios. And I will not be your host today. I will present your host a bit later. But at this point, so warm welcome. This is the first event for 2023, first hybrid event at least. And this will be streamed, so it's almost full house here today on site, and online we have a bunch of other enthusiastic, interested people. But hopefully this works. Yes, lovely. Couple of words on my behalf. So DAIN Studios. So overtaking AI Monday, which was originally established by Taival, and really by Michael Hanf, Juri Stubbe, a lot of good work over the years. Series of event nurtured, evolved to encompass also other regions, growing to Central Europe. And also a huge contributor for this whole series of events was, of course, Finnish Center for Artificial Intelligence, so FCAI. And I have Patrick Florén also here. So maybe, Patrick, you would like to stand up and say a couple of welcoming words.
Thank you. I'm Patrick Florén, as said. So we're very happy that DAIN Studios took over this great event and look forward to a series of good events. So Finnish Center for Artificial Intelligence, if you don't know what it is an Academy of Finland flagship. It means that it's top research with great impact, and it's founded by Aalto University, University of Helsinki, and VTT. And we have also some new things. We are now involved in a European Digital Innovation Hub, and maybe at some other event we could tell a little bit about what that is. It's about helping small and medium-sized enterprises. So I hand over to you that this was my minute, and look forward to hearing about what's going on today.
Thank you, Patrick. So as Patrick was saying, so we are really glad at DAIN Studios to take the reins of this great event and continue and really host all these international hybrid events. So really something that take place on site, but also that will be streamed internationally, not only to DACH area, but over the globe. And too many screens. Couple of words about DAIN Studios, maybe not a familiar company to all of you, but we are now 7 years young data and AI consultancy, and really operating mostly in Finland and in DACH area, so Germany, Austria, Switzerland, also some other countries as well. But since its inception, so 7 years ago, so we have been equipping, guiding, empowering different organizations, industry agnostically, to really evolve on their journey towards data fluency. Data fluency for us, it's something a bit more than just being data literate. It's really about not only knowing, but being able to apply and generate value with data and AI. And not just the technical folks, but really across the organization. What DAIN is doing in particular, so we are really helping companies from the strategic data AI business design to help manage, kind of like harness this operational excellence. So we have been developing a lot of bespoke data and AI solutions and building enabling infrastructure, various kinds, from cloud to many others as well. Today, we are 80 people and really helping a lot of different companies and organizations. And a couple of words still about, too many screens, about AI Monday. So it's not only this live live event now happening in Helsinki, but also there are various chapters representing local events, mostly in Central Europe, but other locations as well. And there are a couple of new chapters starting their journey as well. So for example, Vienna and Dresden, so they will start some interesting local on-site events, local community building. So this will be something interesting happening there as well. And then final words from me, and then I will present your host for today. But really that this is not only this one-off event. This will be a start for interesting journey to come, and hopefully you are joining us. And there is the community and there is the website aimonday.de. Please join the emailing list. You will get lots of interesting newsletters. We're not spamming you, only the interesting ones will come. But also then really joining these local organizations if those might be of interest for you. And then a couple of important remarks. So if you are having questions, we are having quite tight time slots for the speakers today. So we will be, and as we're having also the online audience. So in order to be democratic and gather all the questions, so please use this one. So ai.monday.de/live. This is to gather your on the spot questions, and we will be addressing those ones as we are going through the event. And but firstly, I would really ask you to enjoy the event, and thanks for taking the time for coming here on site and also online. But without further ado, I will hand over to your host of today, and that will be Patrick Qvick from DAIN Studios. Welcome, Patrick.
So welcome everyone on my behalf as well. I'm Patrick Qvick, and I will be the host and the panel moderator for today. We have a really interesting topic today, responsible AI in the light of the new EU AI Act that's coming into force in some years' time. I will first start by introducing our speakers who are seated here and their topics, and then I will have a short presentation about the EU AI Act. So first, introducing myself. So I'm Patrick Qvick. I'm a principal data and AI strategist at DAIN Studios, working in Helsinki, living in Espoo. I'm responsible of our data governance services and the team we have for data governance at DAIN Studios. I'm really enthusiastic about data and AI, data governance, of course, also organizational change and leadership. One of the reasons why I'm giving this speech and the reason why I'm also here is that I worked quite a bit with GDPR and other data protection laws in the past. So 2013, I was living in Singapore, working there for a company called PwC, and we were helping a lot of organizations there to comply with the new legislation they had coming in. So there was a law called PDPA, Personal Data Protection Act, that came to life in 2014. So I was helping organizations to change the way they work with their personal data and so forth. And then 2015, I came back to Finland and I started working for PwC and worked for another consulting company. And we were supporting organizations in the way they use personal data. So supporting them with the change to comply with GDPR. So that's sort of a bit about my background. And AI ethics, I believe, is a really interesting topic, not just because of the legislation, but also because AI will bring us into these discussions that we would probably not have. So really important discussions about who, for instance, if there's a self-driving car, who the car might hit, Like normally, this discussion would never happen because there would be a person driving the car and making the action. So it really brings us these super important and highly interesting discussions. So that's shortly about me. Then after this, we have Meeri Haataja, who is seated there. She's a CEO and a co-founder of Saidot, and she will be speaking about debunking the myths and the AI Act and Innovation Tribe together. So super interesting topic. Then we have Juha Vesanto, and Juha is from OP. He's a principal data scientist at OP Financial Group. And his topic also super interesting. So OP has already done something. So it says already there, OP's first AI transparency report. And after that, we have Pasi Rautio, service manager and a team lead at AI at City of Helsinki. And his topic is proactive services, what this has to do with AI, how does it relate to the EU AI law. And finally, we have Timo Tirkkonen, co-founder and partner at Inventure, and he will talk about how startups are adapting to EU AI Ethics Act. So super interesting presentations. Looking forward to all of them. So my topic of today is an introduction to the EU AI Act, and it's a quite short presentation. And let's see if we get some questions afterwards, but maybe we can jump to it. So I have divided my presentation into a few questions. So firstly, why? So why is EU implementing this legislation? Then what? So shortly talking about what does it entail and what are the key things based on my subjective understanding of it. Then how? So how is the act enforced? And then when? So a bit about the timeline and our current understanding of it. And lastly, I will also give you some key takeaways. They are more from my experience around working with different legislation changes for organizations, both in Singapore and Finland. So why is EU implementing this? Well, every one of us today have used AI. Maybe you read some news online. Maybe you went on a social media platform. Maybe you didn't know how to get here, so you were using Google Maps or some other map tool. So everyone is using AI more and more. So AI as in machine learning, as in algorithms. So it's becoming more and more important. It's making more of our decisions that we have in our lives, more of the important decisions. And this is a great thing, of course. It can support us in being more efficient. It can support us in finding a nice spot, finding a new place quite easily. It can support us in making the important decisions also in our lives. But it's not only a good thing, of course. There are also risks. With every opportunity, the other side of the opportunity is a risk. So it actually brings new risks and possible negative consequences. So what is EU now doing is proposing a legislation that respects our fundamental rights. And this is a critical component of the act, providing us or ensuring that our fundamental rights are respected. The other thing that is quite important there is the harmonized rules for developing and placing AI in the market. So that's something that was a target for GDPR as well, bringing these same rules for all different European countries, similar rules at least, on how to process personal data, and now with this legislation on how to take AI and put it on the market. So briefly about the EU AI Act. So it has a definition of AI, which states that AI is a solution based on input, uses certain techniques. It actually have a list of these techniques in one of the appendices, gives output based on human given objectives. So, and the output could be content, decision, and so forth. And this topic, actually, the topic of definition of AI, is something that is being still under discussion. So if you go and read the AI Act and read the appendices, you might realize that it's actually really broad, that what is considered as AI. What is considered as AI also includes these traditional software development techniques, or traditional software techniques, so even a logical algorithms, so which are written by humans. But this is still a debatable thing. And most likely, or at least let's put it this way, it might change. So what is being sort of tried towards is a more narrow definition of AI. So the current text is really broad, but it might be narrowed down. And we don't have the final text yet, so this is due to change. The other thing that I wanted to outline here is a risk-based approach. So a risk-based approach is something that was really, to me, it became familiar with GDPR. GDPR talks a lot about understanding the risks of the individuals, understanding what kind of risks we are doing when we are processing the personal data. And EU AI Act also talks about risk-based approach, but it actually brings even more detailed definitions of risks by introducing risk levels. And this is one way to look at them. So the risk-based approach can be seen through these different risk brackets, you could say. So if we start from the right-hand side from here, we have minimal risk. And minimal risks are things like spam filters, AI-enabled video games, and so forth. And for these, there are no specific mandatory requirements. The requirements are the Act or the Commission says that these voluntary codes of conduct would be a nice thing to have, but not mandatory. Then we have the second risk category there, which is limited risks. And limited risks include chatbots, deepfakes, emotion recognition systems, to name a few. And these are objected to the transparency requirements. So being transparent towards the individuals. And then we have high risk. So high risk is sort of the backbone of the legislation, one could even say. It includes things like critical infrastructure or applications linked to critical infrastructure, biometric ID systems, education, vocational training, such as automated scoring of exams, employment, worker management, access to self-employment, essential private and public services, including also evaluation of creditworthiness, so linked to obviously the banks and other parties, law enforcement systems, and so forth. So also what must be noted that there is in one of the annexes, there is a list of these high risk applications, but also what is stated in Article 7 is that an AI system that poses a risk and harm of health and safety or a risk of adverse impact to the fundamental rights to the individuals also should be considered as high risk. So it sort of leaves a bit of room for defining high risk systems, not only stating them precisely. And finally, we have the unacceptable risk. So that's something that cannot be done. It's prohibited. And there we have things like social scoring. So social scoring, you might have read that in some countries or some markets, it's possible to do, like, for instance, in China. Then we have biometrics, real-time remote identification systems in publicly accessible places used by law enforcement. So a lot of these things that are actually prohibited are unacceptable risk. They are something that are done by the public entities, like, for instance, law enforcement. So this is how the risk is divided. So it actually, this legislation brings this comprehensive way to list the different risks. So then what we actually have in the legislation is requirements for high risk AI systems. And you can see there's quite a comprehensive list of things. Maybe we'll run through a few of them with our limited timeline. So first we have a risk management system. So that means that the organization taking AI into use needs to understand or needs to have some kind of a system to assess the risk of the AI or the solutions that is put onto market. So there needs to be a risk management system, and there's even specific requirements there for those. Secondly, we have data governance and management. So that means that we need to understand the data that we use to train the algorithms. We need to have a data governance system and data management system to do that. Then thirdly, we have transparency. So transparency, meaning that we tell the individuals whose data is being processed by the AI, what is happening there. And also human oversight, so that if the AI is making decisions or so forth, the individuals can understand to some extent that what is happening, what kind of decisions, or what is the algorithm actually doing. And if you look at these two, so if you really think about transparency, human oversight, and you're quite familiar maybe with GDPR, you might recall that there was actually an article about that in GDPR, which talked about automated decision making. So these things are sort of nothing new if your AI is making automated decisions that are somehow significant to the individuals, for instance, giving credit. So you might already have some of those things in place. Well, how is the act enforced? Nothing new here. Similarly, as with GDPR or any other regulation or acts. So there is a national supervisory authority that will be established in different countries. Also, the penalties are something you might have heard with GDPR. So with this, they are slightly higher, but similar kind of thing. So talking about 30 million turnover, 30 million based on the turnover, or 6%. But of course, the risk is not only about getting a fine or getting a penalty. It's also about the fact that there is a possibility of reputational risk because of increased awareness. So when these kind of legislational changes happen, the media will talk about them. People will start understanding a bit better and questioning maybe things that are happening. And where we are now with the act, so we don't know when it's going to be moved to when it's going to be adopted. So this is a possible scenario how it might happen, but nothing, as you can see, everything that I put there is estimated. There would be a transitional period of 1.5 to 2 years, as with GDPR was 2 years. So my key takeaways from this is start early. So even though we don't have the final text yet available, we still have sort of the big guidelines will not change. Even if the definition of AI changes slightly, we can already now know that machine learning algorithms will be AI. That's for certain. Take the following steps. Understand the requirements from the EU AI. That's really, really highly important. Assess your current state and then create a plan to go forward to the target state. And then implement and change. And it's always an organizational change. This will have an impact how you develop AI. Also, think outside of the legislation. It's not only about this legislation. It's also about being ethical. It's also about building ethical AI applications. And that's definitely something we, as a society, want to happen. We don't want to build unethical AI that will have bad consequences to us as individuals. Thank you. Yes, I guess now we will jump to the next presentation. So, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yes. All right. Sorry for the finish. Okay. Hi, everyone. Really pleasure to be here. A lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces as well, at least here in this room. let's see if we find my slides. All right. So my topic is, will AI Act and innovation thrive together? The two words, the keywords in here, innovation and regulation, or AI Act, both are very close to my heart. Basically, for the whole my career, 20 years, I've been working on innovation, and specifically data and analytics, AI innovation in different kinds of large organizations. And nowadays, also since 2018, I've been taking forward innovation in the AI governance space, responsible AI space. So I can tell you that I'm very concerned about and really find it super important that our regulations will not stop our innovation. But also the story of my company was really basically built on the recognition that the ways that we are developing today and in the past, AI systems, new technologies don't necessarily consider all the aspects that they should be considering. And we have seen also outcomes that are not something that we look for when putting in place these systems, and it has become basically a consensus that almost everyone in this space knows that something needs to be also regulated. And the question is more like, how do we regulate, not whether or not we should regulate. And this is not only in Europe, but happening also around the world. In China, for example, we have already seen specific regulations in the area of AI. But it's an interesting question. How do these come together? And what makes me particularly sad is to see these kind of narratives and discussions a lot in this area when we discuss about the AI Act. And I don't even want to mention people who are saying this. You can reference to this survey and have a look. There was a really good important perspective on this one from SMEs around the Europe, or organizations supporting SMEs around the Europe, and the message was basically around these lines, and they were really concerned point of views from both SME organizations as well as investors, that this is what is happening in Europe. And what I'm feeling sad about these ones, that often when I read those, I feel that they are not necessarily based on the facts about how the regulation has been shaped. And what I wanted to do today is to bring on table everything that I found from the Act related to innovation and the mechanisms that there has been built to try to avoid over-regulation. I was lucky that Patrick went through the regulation before this one, because we would absolutely not have time to go through in details the requirements. But we cannot discuss this without actually looking at the requirements. The bulk of the regulation is on high-risk systems. So before going there, let's just face, we want to limit some kind of innovation. So we want to limit that kind of innovation that basically supports authoritative regimes against democratic societies, and control of citizens and things like that, social scoring as a one example. So some of the innovations can and should be stopped or limited, and that's where the prohibitions of the regulation comes. But the actual bulk of the regulation is high-risk systems, and the questions related to this, whether or not it is stopping or limiting innovations in Europe, should be considered from the perspective of actually looking at the requirements. And these are the requirements, and there has been a lot of progress related to these requirements in the past 2 years, when there has been iterations of the regulation. So early in the times, in the first versions, there was some wordings that were really not even possible to implement that, but many of those has been fixed. And my point, and I really want to encourage everyone, data scientists in this room and people who are developing these systems, do this look unnecessary or somehow too hard requirements? Because to me, they look like a normal engineering good practices, normal quality management good practices. And I'm a little bit distracted by discussing with the data scientist who is developing a system for some very influential area like health sector, and like, who says that, okay, it's not relevant to even think about risks or like, even think how to mitigate those. So the requirements for high risk systems are, in my opinion, reasonable. They are absolutely not something that is very something that isn't part of normal good practices. Okay, but that's about it. Let's have a look at the then specific mechanisms. Still, of course, we need to recognize that we shouldn't put even reasonable requirements for that kind of systems that don't pose risks, and we need to be reasonable in the scoping of the regulations. And this is a list. If you haven't read the regulation, these might be a little bit too detailed for you, but I hope that I can provide this as a reference list for you to then maybe visit later when you have been looking into regulation in more detail. Scope as a first one. So in that slide that Patrick showed, there was this showing the different categories. So the categories are not equally split. So it's not like 25% prohibited and so forth. According to Commission, the high part, share of high risk systems out of all systems is around, or it's estimated to be 5 to 15%. Of course, we can. There are arguments and I guess no one knows exact figure, and this of course changes if the definition or the list of high risk systems. But what is important to know that probably your system is not part of it if we think that it's equally distributed here. So some points related to the scope. There are a lot of systems which already are regulated. So for example, medical devices or the Annex 2, that's about systems, AI systems that are already regulated by safety regulations. So those will be part of it, and the requirements will be embedded into the current existing regulations. The Annex 3 is what has gained most focus or discussion. That's sort of new standalone systems related to that will be regulated as high-risk systems. But something that is super important over there as well. When you look at that list, Annex 3, don't look at the categories, look at the lowest level of detail in that annex, because that's also confusing. Often people think that all the education-related systems are there. No, it's not. It's only the ones that are actually mentioned on the lowest level of the list. And one important sort of exception there as well in the latest editions, it's excluding systems that are purely accessory. So if you are feeding some guidance for human who will do the decision, and you can say that this is absolutely not doing automatically decisions, it's supporting human, it can be under the purely accessory. This can even become kind of a loophole. I see, but anyways, it's there. And also let's remember, scientific research and development is not on in scope. What is one of the biggest questions today is the general purpose systems. And this is something that wasn't initially there. It has been added there. And of course, what we have seen in the area of foundation models development last year, this is absolutely important to somehow be covered and take into account when setting up any regulation related to AI. But what is important, that by the way potentially could explode the scope of systems there. I personally think that we shouldn't consider all the general purpose systems as high risk systems, even though they would be used there, but treat them a little bit differently. But what is notable is that already now SMEs would be exempt from this requirement. So if you're an SME developing a general purpose system, you wouldn't be regulated or part of the scope. This wouldn't apply to you. Also, one of the big requirements and probably the most expensive requirement is the quality management system on this. And I was really happy to see that in the latest version, there was also exempt for micro enterprises. So smallest organizations, less than 10 persons, less than 2 million euros revenue, they are exempt from this quality management system. So any of those big figures on the cost don't apply to these. conformity assessment. So how do you actually prove, how do you assess whether your system is following the regulation? This is super important from the compliance cost perspective. So Commission has specifically targeted to limit the third-party auditing requirements to as small as possible. And there is a reason for that. I totally support that perspective, because it's completely different level of cost if you take that path. So most of the so how this basically goes is that the systems that are already governed by the safety regulations of their own specific industry, the requirements and the assessment will be gone through following the existing regulations. So medical devices, you will just go through these aspects as part of your already existing assessment process. And then what comes to these new standalone systems, absolutely majority of them will be assessed via self-assessment. So within your own organization, whether it's whether you integrate it into your data protection assessment processes or some ramp up something new, but anyways, it's self-assessment, and that's really important to keep in mind. A lot of discussion about the compliance cost. I have written an article on this one, so have a look at that one. The expectation is that one system which costs on average, or the estimate is something like 170,000 euros as a reference. So of one that kind of system, the compliance costs are estimated to be from 15 to 30. Actually, the official number is 15, but I made it double just to not underestimate there. But it should be on a relatively reachable figures. Then what comes to this third-party verification, and especially if you are required to have that quality management system that needs to be audited, that's where the high costs come from. So and this applies to those who are really required to go through those these capabilities required by other regulations as well. So you see that it's really important the self-assessment versus third-party regulation from the cost perspective. Penalties, that's also where they have really kept in mind SMEs. While the penalties are expected to be 4 to 6% for overall across the providers for non-compliance, so SMEs for SMEs it would be 2 to 3%, so half of it. All right, I'm losing. Our time is running out. So testing period, 12 months testing period. Keep that in mind. So you need to submit a request for this testing period for a regulator. But anyways, that will definitely extend your period of getting to your compliance. And regulative sandboxes. Sorry, I don't have time to go through that one. But you see that there are a lot of actions and items trying to really avoid this overregulation. And let's keep in mind the actual requirements, which are pretty reasonable. So, okay, maybe you get my point. I don't think this is killing innovation. I think this is really now the time for us in Europe as an AI community in Finland, and also hopefully AI community that contributes to the European and global discussions about this topic. So let's base on our discussions on the facts and take this opportunity to actually stand up for our accountability to build that kind of systems that are taking that positive impact and changing our societies and lives in a positive way while managing the risks related to these systems. Thank you.
Thank you. That was super interesting. So next, Juha Vesanto.
So, hello everybody. Nice to be here. So, my name is Juha Vesanto. I'm a few words about myself. So I'm the principal data scientist at OP, or actually used to be. As of start of this year, I'm heading a tribe, what we call the data platform and AI tribe. But let's a few words about the topic first. So my topic is already there, OP's first AI transparency report. So it's a bold claim. And well, it's up to you whether you want to be mean with the questions part or whether you want to be gentle. But I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that the AI Act, we started early and we plan to be there kind of compliant with the AI Act, when it actually comes into effect. And this is the first baby step that we have done in terms of that. So, well, I already said something about me. My background is in the Aalto University. Spent 10 years in extract company, and then as a director of analytics in doing retail analytics. And for the past 5 years, I've been working at OP on the finance sector. This is our responsible AI journey for OP. So Meeri was actually part of setting the FCAI project back in the day, and was also part of devising the ethical principles for the use of AI at OP. So we kind of recognized that the importance of doing ethical AI or AI in an ethical fashion already several years ago. With respect to the current AI Act, I think Finland especially has been on one of the forerunners on that area, because the AIGA project was started quite early. I think it was even before the AI Act was actually anyhow public. So how to govern and govern AI responsibly and so forth. And our AI transparency framework, which we did last year, is based on the work of the AIGA project. So either is good, but we decided to do some modifications to the basic output from the AIGA, and then, well, came up with our own framework, which is slightly modified. And so, yeah, we made our first AI transparency report on my financial balance AI model, and it was published, well, in the autumn, but kind of the really public version came out in January. And of course, with the history, there's future also to consider. Our current estimate is that AI Act will actually become accepted in 2024, and then a couple of years after that, it will actually come into effect. But we'll see what happens. So the framework consists of kind of a matrix of viewpoints. There are these 8 different assessment categories. And then what we did was we recognized that actually it's not sufficient to just go through these assessment categories on whether we have handled data correctly or whether we have handled risk and impact evaluation correctly. We also need to consider the viewpoints. I mean, who is asking the question? So we have 4 different viewpoints. We have customer, we have internal specialist, kind of a colleague to the one who is doing the AI system. Then we have external specialists, and then we have auditors. And they all have different viewpoints and different stresses on what is important and how in-depth information they are actually after. Now, okay, you can't see it quite right, but it's okay because the text is anyway so small. So each of those categories consists of a list of questions or requirements. And the point is that we go through those questions for each of those categories from the chosen viewpoint. And the end result is something that then we can evaluate as a whole, whether we are compliant, where we are lacking with respect to the regulation or requirements and so forth. And the magic tool that we use to do all of this is Excel. Hopefully we'll have something else at some point. But yeah, that's the essence. So what we did last year was that we chose this one particular AI model, which is actually a model for categorizing payment transactions. There's nothing fancy about it. Well, we are still using a neural network algorithm to do it because it's slightly more complicated thing than what you would actually expect. But anyway, it's an AI model. Certainly not a high-risk AI model, but still an AI model. So what we wanted to do, we want to try out this framework with a real case and see where we go. So as our viewpoint, we chose the customer. So our kind of question to ourselves was, how will the customer view our model? How this system, AI system that we are talking about? What kind of questions does the customer have? Because the customer has certainly a different set of questions than, for example, an internal specialist or an auditor. The auditor is after regulatory compliance and that kind of stuff. The customer is concerned with, okay, what's in it for me? Can I trust this? They are not after very specific technical details or kind of specific points about the legislation. They are concerned about whether I can trust this. So after choosing the viewpoint, which we chose as the customer, then we went through all of those questions that we had, assigned importance for each of those questions. And in many of those cases, we have a list of questions, but then we consider that, okay, this question is not relevant for the customer. It might be relevant for an external specialist who is very proficient about AI and has very high kind of specific AI kind of technical questions about how the AI has been trained or implemented and so forth. The average customer doesn't care. So it's not really relevant. They still need to know that, okay, it was done good. They can trust the bank and the model and so forth. After that, we went through the interviews. So we had an external partner who did the interviews for us. So we didn't do a self-assessment. We had an external partner to do it. And then finally, they summarized the results. Well, you can actually go and check the results yourself. I know it's a long web address, but yeah, you can find it from for AI transparency reports from OP website. That's just kind of the front page of the report. What it boils down to, well, first of all, the AI system that was evaluated was this My Financial Balance or oma talouden tasapaino. So as I mentioned, it's not very, it's not a very fancy AI system as such. It's about categorizing your payment transactions into categories. Like this is an grocery store. Groceries. This is here you are paying for taxis or electricity and so forth. And then what you look into is whether you are kind of balanced overall. Where does your money go and so forth. And not boring with you with the rest of the details, this is the end result. So this you can see here the 8 categories. The questions that we considered most important from the viewpoint of the customer, and then the evaluation result is on the far right. We got relatively good marks for most of the categories. There's one category where we got the lowest amount of points or lowest evaluation, and that was our communication about the content of the AI system or how the model works, because we had, well, by design or by choice, we had decided not to tell very detailed explanations on what the kind of underlying AI system is. We just talked about the categorization, and that's it. So it doesn't really tell anything about how the categorization was done and so on. So we didn't pass the test in that respect. However, this report is actually part of our mitigation. So doing this kind of report, we actually, if we would do the evaluation again, we would actually get better points. Okay, as a conclusion, so we have done one of our first practice on this front. The next thing we'll do is that we do it again with some other AI model. We are considering now several options. Probably go with something from the claims side, insurance claims side, and so forth, but we'll see. And you know, if the AI Act comes into effect in, let's say, 2025 or so, then by that time we'll have several reports already there, and we have kind of tried several times the same practice and so forth. Okay, what's in it for OP? We are one of the kind of front runners, again, if I may say. So there are others who have done similar kind of good work, but certainly we kind of take pride in being one of the first ones. The end result should be, in the long run, that we have actually comprehensive coverage of OP's AI solutions with these kinds of reports. Not necessarily everything, but most important ones, certainly, and certainly the high-risk ones. Will be compliant with the AI Act. And what we're trying to do is kind of develop the standards and efficient ways of working on how to do this. ICA project did a magnificent job in constructing a framework. For our cases, it was kind of even more extensive than what we needed, so we did it a bit differently. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully, this work and this report will make it easier for others also to try it out. Thanks.
Thank you. That was super interesting. We actually have a question for you. Okay. It says, can you elaborate on the content of the ethical principles, how they were selected and by who? Let's keep it short.
Meeri, do you want to answer? I have to admit that I don't know them by heart, I don't remember them by heart. But you can find them from OP's website and so forth. The ethical principles are really about, you know, being people first, trust first, carrying ownership and carrying kind of the responsibility of our actions. That's the essence.
Great, thank you. So actually, one point to mention here first, if you're in Twitter, go there, use hashtag AI Monday to post something about the event. It will make us super happy. Thank you. So next is Pasi Rautio with his topic. So give big applause to Pasi.
Thank you. I was probably the only one who got applause before the presentation, so I try to manage. So my name is Pasi Rautio. I work for the city of Helsinki. I'm the team lead in AI and optimization team, and I will tell you something about City of Helsinki, about our proactive services and what it has to do with AI, and also what it has to do with AI Act. Well, this is my first slide every time, and you can see the City of Helsinki. It's a very beautiful city. It's quite complex city as well, and also is our organizational charts as well. And this is my favorite slide ever, because you can see how complex our organization is and what kind of services we are providing. And as you can see those green rounds there, we have education division. So we provide schools, kindergartens, and these kind of services to the citizens. And also we have urban environment division. So we have streets, buildings, urban planning, and these kind of services as well. And then we have culture and leisure division. So we have beaches, swimming halls, and theaters as well. So that kind of services as well. And also social and healthcare division and services from there. So we have hospitals and doctors and nurses working for the city. So this is kind of a large scale of services we have to provide, and we have 40,000 people working for the city. And we have mandatory services that we have to provide. There are almost over 500 services, and then there's extra services that we provide. So there's almost 800 services as a citizens you can have from the city. And this is kind of hard work we have to do. You can take the picture. And that's why we have data strategy, because we want to use our data to provide those services. And in our vision, we say that we have the most usable and used urban data by 25. And this is 2 layers vision, because we have to have the most usable data. So we have to have lots of data. We have to have good quality data. And also we have to use it. We have to use it in our services and also provide that to the ecosystem as well. And what does it mean? So we want to provide proactive services to the citizens at people's terms as well. Also, we want to have data-driven decision-making, and we want to do optimization and fostering business ecosystems. So we have to use the data so we can achieve these goals. And what kind of services do we have nowadays? We have more of these reactive services. So you fill a form. First, you have to learn what kind of services you can have from the city. Then you have to find the service and website. You have to fill the form. You should know how to fill it. And then you have to send it to the right place. And then you wait, is it approved or not? But this is not very good way to have the services. And in the future, we would like to use the data. We want to use the data analytics and also AI to provide those services. So we could provide those proactive way. They could be user-friendly and personalized as well. And we have already done this. We have few services already. We have this preschool placement for 6-year-olds, and it happened with SMS. This was very simple service because we know the parents, we know where they live, and we know the age, and we know when to give the service. But think about the healthcare services. You don't know when people are going to have heart attack or cancer. So we have to use some kind of a analytics or AI to do that prediction. And in this world, we provide these old kind of services, but in the future there should be different kind of services, practice services, but regulation is made for the old kind of services. And this is kind of something that we have to wait when we are allowed to do the practice services. And what about the regulation? Well, the most problematic issue to provide those practice services is actually the regulation that we already have. It's not about the AI Act itself. We have different laws to the education services and different laws to the healthcare services, and also we have GDPR, and this is the most problematic at this point. But what about the AI Act? I think in the city we have the same situation as we had earlier with GDPR, before that came in use, because we don't know how it's actually affecting us, and we are trying to figure it out. And we are, well, I don't say there's a fear, but something uncertainty about the regulation. But I think when it's come, we know what we can do and what we are not allowed to do. But it's not enough that only regulation. We also need some kind of support to understand how it works and how it works in Finland. And it should be more efficient way than in GDPR, because nowadays you have to just do something and then you learn afterwards, is it illegal or not? But with AI, we should learn that before we actually do the actual IT system. And also there's some problems with the law on the secondary use of health and social data, FinData, because they are helping us, but you have to wait the answer about half a year. So we cannot be that late when we are using AI or trying to do new systems. And if there's some kind of definition of AI, I think that's, well, Meeri told us quite clearly what that might be, but still there's gray areas, and are we able to use that system or not? There's something issues there. And also, I think when they have been doing the AI Act, they should have involved public sector more, because they are using the actual data from the citizens quite a lot more than actual companies. And nowadays it feels more like it's made for the bigger companies, private sector companies. And I think in the AI Act starting point is actually the that you use AI misused or from risk perspective, and it's not coming from the actual use cases. If we want to make better services or better life for our citizens, it's not the starting point. And also the high-risk system and public sector, they are kind of connecting to each other, because there's the most usable cases when there are high-risk systems. And I think AI in cities depends on the trust of the citizens. And this is something that we already have done quite a lot. And that's why we already have the AI register. We made this with City of Amsterdam. We have launched it already almost, well, over 2 years ago. And we made it with Saidot. And there in this AI register, we tell what kind of AI systems we nowadays have. And also we tell the basic information about the system. We tell them the data sets, also about the human oversight and risk management. So we want to be open and transparent. So we already have done few things preparing for the AI Act, even we don't know if these are all mandatory or not. But we have the AI register, as I told you, And also we have AI procurement standards when we are buying AI systems. And also we have now, we are doing the AI and data ethical principles. And we already asked feedback from the citizens, companies, employees, and lots of other people. And also after these ethical principles, we are going to have some kind of data and AI ethical board, so they can help us to develop ethical solutions. I think this is my quick presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Really nice to see that there's already things happening in the market and doing things even before the legislation has come to force. Then next we have Timo Tirkkonen talking about how startups are adapting to EU AI Ethics Act. Let's give him a round of applause to welcome Timo.
Thank you. Thank you. So if as you said, Patrick, that now we heard cases where things are happening, I might be the opposite of that thing. But how many startups are there actually in the live audience? Okay, some. And how many wants to be an entrepreneur or startup, or anyone who is thinking about it? Yeah, I saw that this was also the school of. But then quickly myself, co-founder and partner at Inventure. So we are a VC, venture capitalist, and we invest then in startups very early stage, and both was actually one of our company. So happy that we have been there forerunners, although I didn't know about it, but that's another story. But then a little bit, I'm now going to go very to the grassroots to concrete what's happening in the kind of and what kind of I did a quick survey also from our startups. I would say we have 3 maybe very deep in the ML. First of all, I'm going to tell a story because I never use AI. I was at the GTC, NVIDIA's conference kind of 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a very good speech about AI, and then kind of a little elderly man stood up and started a little bit laughing there and said that this is so nice that your computer scientist talks about artificial intelligence. I'm a neuro professor and been studying the human brain for 35 or was it 40 years. We know 10% how the human brains work, so we are pretty far away from artificial intelligence. So that was a quite funny remark he made. But then this is how startups and I would say investors also look. Oh no, not another regulation or directive or whatever. And of course, everyone says, we are small, it can't apply to us. Wrong. Then everybody starts to think work and cost. We're a team of 20 to 30. Who the hell is going to look on this thing? Luckily, everybody thought the same on the GDPR, but GDPR was much easier for startups since you kind of don't have the info so much for yourself. So you just made like the Helsinki city has, no, was it the OP who you did an Excel and because when you do the Excel and you report in 30 days of a breach, that's the out of jail card. That's how at least the startups and we investors look at it. But we see this as a little different. So the work and cost, you have to take it seriously. Then comes that, does anybody understand it? And will it pass, poorly done, definitions, etc. And I will say that all in the startup and maybe investor ecosystems really think that this 2-year kind of transition period is way too optimistic. We are pretty sure that the big corporations will lobby it, especially the automotive space, the banks, everybody. They have no way of doing it in 2 years, in my view. But that's my personal opinion. Don't quote me on that thing. But then we have two, especially one entrepreneur who is in the field already, and he really says that the smart ones turns the AI Act to their advantage as a USP, unique selling proposition. So to really, because in the next slide is that it's well becoming increasingly clear. It will be regulated in the near future. So I mean, I wouldn't say to a startup that try to be a Don Quixote, you will lose that battle. But the good is that the AI Act puts a premium on a trustworthy AI and explainable AI. This is actually a new category what the Gartner Group, who very much looks on the trends, and especially if you want to be in regulated markets, sell your products like the pharma, the insurance, the banks, you will need to start explaining what happens in your, because unfortunately many ML things is a little of a black box. You have a lot of inputs, then you have a put there, and then comes output, and then people start figuring out that what really happened here in between. Actually, the pharmas in drug discovery puts a lot of money and human beings, because they have to write to the FDA and to the drug things. They have to dare say that how did they come up with this, and their data points are huge. And that's why startups also, and I think medium-sized, much more when you start to get to have explainable AI and trustworthy AI, also start putting that into your processes and also market it, because I think in Europe, of course, when the AI Act comes, this will be a due diligence and the procurement and everything of that thing, especially to these regulated high-risk companies. But then I think from my own view, I'm a guy who hates regulation. I think the government should not regulate what the private sector does. But I understand in this case on the high risk, but I don't understand why they should have anything with the other things to do. But that's my personal opinion. But what I like about this most is because now we get about 2,500, 3,000 kind of proposals or pitch decks. 80 to 85% claim they have an AI. So now I think that I hope that number goes down, because when you look at them, most of them have a huge Excel which they want to kind of match with an Excel, another Excel, and because it's very simple. It has nothing to do with ML or anything. So will help my job, because I'm usually looking at these crazy things. This is probably what many of the startups look at, and that's why not much has actually happened yet. I think was there that we know when we know, and because you have to remember that most of our companies are also under 100 persons, and then there was some kind of who said that there's a test period 12 months. 12 months in an startup world is because every financing round lasts about 18 to 24 months. So that's half of your life during that period. If you can't sell or whatever, or it's a nightmare. But that's why I think everybody will start to act when you really know, and then everybody hopes that there will be the SME exemption. I'm a little bit because we had the same where the AI FM directive. The AI has nothing to do. That's a financial thing which came, and that regulation was supposed to be also that small funds would be exemption for that one. Everybody who has a fund under 500 million. Well, that did not happen. So now if you have a 30 million fund and you have a 20 billion fund, you report the same, which is nonsense. That's why we have now 2 people doing that in our company. So that's why I'm a little bit on these promises of the exemption skeptics. You probably understand why, because that costs a lot of money. Then a little bit, I think these were true, but this quite good also indicates actually corresponds very good to the survey I did to 8 or 9 companies. Although this is an older survey, but 50%, yes, we recognize this one. I would say of ours, I would say what to so about 20% are putting it forward now. I think the rest will wait till they really know in which category they are. And the funny part is that everybody somehow, many wants to be in the high risk because then they have something unique, they think, but then they don't want to be in the high risk. So it is quite interesting, that thing. This goes fast. This is maybe one which probably you guys who knows this better, but these are quite what has been said, how to assess. But also people are afraid that because we are quite Puritan Lutheranians in the DACH and the Nordic countries, will we lose to the US and China their race? That is what many really, what was in the other survey, is a little bit afraid, and when will the Southern Europe comply to this? So that is, this is a lot of things which comes up. And one is the CE marking, which I'm a little lost on that one, but the startups are really afraid that the IP or patents, but the IP, because everybody thinks that they have something special in their own melting, that will they lose that win? Will it be public or because you can be transparent and fairness and everything, but you still have your secret sauce. So how will that be? And then also it's software. You do updates every week. You do major updates every half a year. When do you have to have a new CE marking on it? So this is something what the startups are quite afraid of also. And then the cost and compliance. I mean, that is startups to survive. I mean, you have a marathon race, but you have to run 100-meter all the time. So how to be agile? I mean, you do something, you go in this direction, you almost have a ready-made product, but then you go there. So if you have to do these kind of a test periods, compliances, CE markings, how can you be competitive against those who don't need to do it? And then, and this we already had. I think here comes the about the same, and the 30 here comes the same, as I said, that 50% of the AI systems may be classified high risk. The startups think, and I think they think themselves. I think they more think from their own technology point of view than the classification, and that's because they don't know so much about it. That's how I see. But then, which has to be taking very is that both investors and the startups believe that this will slow down the AI innovation. We heard another one, but it is still, there's a big difference that who does the funding. I mean, EU, I think it's maybe because of this concern, they are putting up a 10 billion deep tech fund, but then money doesn't solve things. It's also the kind of contacts and everything what the investors does. Because I hope this I mean, it's been talked a lot that this will have the Brussels effect, like the GDPR had and the food things. And I really hope it does, but time will tell. Yeah, I don't have that much time anymore. So this is also about the competitiveness, because this VCs also say that they will go much more to low risk and small vertical than going to broader and deep risk. But of course, might be in the questionnaire that's VCs try to lobby the thing. But to conclude, I think we need much clearer from the startup and investor point of view, clearer definitions and cost analysis to start doing the things. Of course, this will happen, but I don't think many startups will be the first one to go for it. And one is that, of course, all the risk will set, because lawyers will always also. So when you sell a company or you invest in a company, there will be so-called reps and warranties, and you have to also then say that you comply to everything. And if you don't comply, then the poor founders also pay. So there are many reasons why this should start, and that's also my conclusion. It's a great start, but just a start, both on how it's defined and how the startups and investors are working. It's probably because we investors are data driven and the startups are data driven. So it starts to start a project when you don't know the data. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really interesting to see a different kind of perspective to the topic. So next we have a panel discussion. So, but before we start that, so everyone who is here, please note that after we end today, there's also some refreshments available for us. So please don't leave, stay here. We can have a nice discussion about the topics and drink and eat something. But so for the panel discussions, I would invite all of our panelists here, and then let's everyone else give a big applause to our panel discussion participants. How do we see? Anyway. So we are setting up the camera here. So we have some questions that have come through the chat. So thank you all for those. But I think what I would like to start with is a question to Meeri. And the question is about organization. So we saw here that, for instance, OP and City of Helsinki have already done something with the topic. But what is your feeling on the market? Are there a lot of organizations that have started already something, or is anything happening? What is the...
This spring, in the next few months, we are onboarding around 200 European SMEs to get started. Not to comply with everything, but to get started. So I think it's definitely happening. I'm happy to provide something for your portfolio as well. Yeah, I think what we are seeing. I'm not talking about SMEs, and I think the pioneers are really the large enterprises and large government organizations, like we have heard in this discussion as well. But this is, I think the AI Act is already, even though it's still under preparation, it's definitely impacting as a standard, creating a standard. And when I look at large organizations, starting to recruit people for this area, starting to put in place AI governance practices, they are taking almost always as a reference AI Act, because no one wants to start from do something and then start to align, because there is we know it relatively well already. So everyone who prepares to the coming regulations or puts in place some kind of AI governance practices definitely uses AI Act as a strong standard and reference.
Thank you. Good to hear that. Then a question to Pasi also on this one. So you mentioned that some cities have done something. So Helsinki and was it Amsterdam? But based on your understanding, have other cities in Finland or somewhere in Europe done something similar as what you've been doing?
I know that there are other European cities that are interested in our AI register and trying to figure out how they could do quite the same things. And Amsterdam, and we are pioneers, yes, but we already made that before even we knew about AI Act, and we were lucky that they are combined, but still we have to do more. But I know that some cities in United States are interested about the AI register in public sector, so they can actually do quite the same, even though they are not going to have the same kind of regulation.
Can I quickly comment on that?
Yes.
Just to build on that, I think the register of Helsinki and Amsterdam has definitely acted as a great inspiration, and a lot of is happening in the Europe in this area. So in the Netherlands, all public organizations are putting in place public registers, because there is even local regulation for that area. Also, we have seen in the UK national standards for encouraging to do to exactly the same France. So a lot of European countries on the public sector side has definitely started to already put in place these local standards, national standards, and even regulations to require this kind of activities that we have heard today from Helsinki.
Thank you. Then for Juha, so you told us quite a bit about the report, but how was it initiated? Like, who initiated the report in OP?
Well, it was the former head of FCAI, Antti Myllymäki, who's been taking this responsible AI issues quite seriously. He's now the CDO at OP Group, and so kind of started there. But I think the kind of initiator in the beginning was really Meeri. I think you really kind of pushed us in the right direction back in the day. So.
There's actually an interesting question here. It says, in the spirit of open debate, this is for everyone here, could you please provide arguments why a separate AI Act is needed on top of existing safety liability regulation? Who would like to?
Well, I have the mic, so yeah. I can start. I like to think about the AI Act as kind of not in the way that how it's written, but more like what is the concern that it actually tries to solve here. And of course, what they're trying to solve with the AI Act is that there's going to be a monstrous AI beast who oppresses the European people. Now, sounds ridiculous, but actually there's a point there. In a world where nothing is kind of gets regulated, the kind of the machine learning, power of machine learning and so forth actually can take us forward in the direction where privacy, fundamental rights of people and so forth actually get violated a lot by government, by companies and so forth. So I think the concern is actually valid. And the big point about the AI Act is how to prevent that from happening. Now, whether it succeeds in that, Well, we'll see. It really depends on those definitions, on what is defined as high risk and what is defined as AI itself. But kind of, I think the point is in a way valid.
Anyone else wants to elaborate on the debate why we should have an AI Act?
Well, I can agree with what Juha raised over there. Technically, there are a lot of systems falling under high risks that are not facing any kind of current regulation. So that's one thing. All the prohibitions are not anywhere. So actually, that was the biggest surprise for me personally, that Europe is ready to prohibit completely some systems. Many are happy for that one, but that's obviously something on top of that one. But there has been a lot of expert work in the area. If we, for example, look at the medical devices and what FDA has been examining throughout the last years on whether their existing medical devices regulations actually address the characteristics and the problems of AI systems. And I will trust on this, better experts on these specific areas who have come into a conclusion that there are things that we want to add to these existing regulations, not to completely replace them or add another regulation, but sort of embed requirements into those that are specifically tackling the characteristics and the risks that are arising from AI.
I agree with these, but I would like to say that transparency is very important, and now the AI Act will help us to do that more, even though those kind of companies or organizations that wouldn't do that if they didn't have to, even though Helsinki already wants to do that without AI Act, but still it's larger scale organization that should do that more transparent way.
Yeah, I think that was a very good question, and I also think we need to regulate the AI, but I don't think we need to take the whole alphabet from A to Z. So because now it's going to do that. I also think that where it should focus, as you said, the tech giants and also other governments, because I think it's so easy to manipulate the opinions nowadays, and that's why I think it's so good that it comes a lot of new technologies where we as ordinary people can also start kind of see that, is this picture real, is this text real? So I think that is much more important than regulate, because regulation it won't stop the crooks. It won't help in my view. It is like doping. Those who want to dope in sports, they are always before the regulations and laws, unfortunately.
So yeah, I think I also think that it's highly important to have this kind of regulation in place, because AI is becoming more and more important in our lives and making more and more of the decisions that are really important to us. And currently looking at, for instance, ChatGPT and its capabilities of writing something for me. So imagine a world where all the news or all the spam and everything is directed to me, and the AI or the party that builds this knows all my data. So how well can, for instance, voting decisions be directed to some direction with this kind of new AI? So that's I think we really need to regulate this.
But how do you regulate that one? Because those guys operate outside EU. So
this links nicely to a question we actually got here, because it said that to whom all the new EU AI Act applies for. So it actually applies for things that are being built in the EU, but also things that are put in the market in the EU. And it's really similar as with GDPR. So GDPR is about us as individuals, our data. It doesn't matter if the party processing our data is outside of the EU. And similarly with this, if you put it on the market in EU, you have to comply with it. So there is no loopholes in that you can change your headquarters to wherever there is no regulations. If you want to put your AI into the market in EU, you have to comply. Okay, well, the next question is to all, but we'll start from Timo. So what are the opportunities you see with the EU AI Act for businesses and organizations?
Well, really what I had in my slides, I think that more and more businesses and we as human beings want to have more the openness, fairness, and transparency there. I mean, if you put, because now actually your credit scoring and loan applications are probably done by a machine learning algorithm. So if you get you are happy, oh, I got the loan, but if you don't get the loan, then you should really also get to know why, and not just say that, well, you don't know. So you should get really which parameters and also should also say that how can I get it better? And that's actually, I don't know who has been in the US now, this kind of an apps who helps your credit scoring in the US is massive. I mean, every second, because they have put so much AI there, so people don't get it. So now comes the new startups who put this kind of how to improve your credit scoring. So it's nuts.
Well, I think when there's AI Act, there's also awareness more about AI and what kind of services you can actually provide. And then when we have the proactive services, we already need the cases where we need AI or data analytics, and then there will be more suppliers that can provide solutions for our problems. But I also see one problem there, because if there's companies that have to apply the AI Act here, so we probably be in a situation that in United States, they can actually provide other services, but we cannot use them same solution here in Europe. And that might be a problem, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think most of the organizations who act on this area, they argument it from the perspective that this is at the moment when the compliance is actually not a problem. Like, there is no law for this one. So they are looking for positive differentiation in the market, in the eyes of their most important stakeholders, customers, employees, future and current employees. Actually, workers are really important stakeholders in these topics, and there's a lot of pressure, growing pressure coming from employees working in this area who actually know how these systems work and think that these are important topics. So I think we should talk more about the value of product quality, because that's about what we are doing. We are building better products. So there are many reasons why organizations might want to try to achieve that one. But I also must say that, of course, this is opening a totally new market, AI governance, a responsible AI market. We in Nordics are very strong in that one, having I calculated like 30% of European startups in this area are from Nordics, and looking at the volume of startups in this area, we're definitely at the top of the whole global space on that area. So of course we need services, we need products to help organizations on this compliance. So I think this is the moment when the one trust of AI governance are founded and really getting started.
Okay, well, I have to say I agree with Meeri a lot on 2 points. First of all, I tend to look at the AI Act not as something that has a lot to do with machine learning. Most of the things that are required there are about just good practices in terms of product development, product management. It kind of enforces us to do AI solutions in a way that is, makes sense from good product management perspective. Now, for startups, that may be heavy. But maybe the opportunity that we can see here is that we can find ways and best practices to do them efficiently and so forth. That's really what I'm hoping for. And that might be actually one of the benefits of the AI Act. Not directly, but it kind of might enforce us to formulate these kind of good product development practices in a way that is actually efficient. The danger is, of course, that that doesn't happen, and furthermore, the legal kind of interpretation turns out to be something monstrous itself, which kind of happened with the GDPR a bit. And then the other one. So for startups, if we just look at the kind of business opportunities here, well, we are already seeing this kind of business on auditing and so forth coming up. So I don't think it's going to be a very big business as such, but certainly there are opportunities there, because if you try for those best practices and be kind of you need to be assessed on those, then there's market for companies who actually assist other companies to be compliant, to be efficient. Let's say, hopefully be efficient more than be just compliant.
Thank you. There's a super interesting question here from Salla that says, as an AI ethicist, I couldn't help noticing ethics was mentioned a few times, but none of the frameworks presented actually use, include, or address actual ethics, saying AI Act. Then the question, do you believe AI Act is enough for ethical AI, or will you add ethics measures to AI governance in your organization? So is AI Act enough, or do we need something additional?
Well, I want to start with my answer, because we actually included those AI ethics principles as part of our framework, because we have those, and so obviously we want to look at those also. But I don't know, maybe the way I feel the framework itself didn't really need that kind of viewpoint there. It stood up quite well on its own. Now, of course, it's not the full story. So having an ethical viewpoint also as part of the framework, as part of the evaluation, is something that I don't know, maybe somebody needs to have a solution for that, because measuring ethics, I'm an engineer by background. So how do you measure ethics?
Good question.
Yeah, I think law isn't supposed to replace ethics. I think there is always room for ethics, and even the discussions regarding how we should think about ChatGPT and the use of that one shows that there are a lot of opinions among the AI ethicists as well about that topic, and that's fine. Law doesn't need to solve all of our ethics problems. One example is whole stakeholder engagement, which is super important in AI ethics. We you had it in your approach that thinking about the 4 different stakeholders, and then actually what are their needs, what are the impacts, and sort of involving the different stakeholders, taking the stakeholder perspective. The AI Act isn't actually addressing any kind of requirements regarding how you should engage with your stakeholders. Or, well, there are some transparency requirements, but in the process of developing systems, if you have an ethical AI development process, you always have some kind of stakeholder perspective in there, but the law doesn't force you to have that one. And I think that's one clear thing that I was initially a little bit surprised that one theme is not there in the Act, but then I figured that, okay, why should it be there? Why do we have to have all the ethical considerations in the law? I think it's fine that that's going to be regulation, that's going to be law, that's one baseline, and then companies who want to do more take stronger ethical perspective, then they can do a lot of things on top of that one. So put the bar a little bit higher. Two different things can live together.
And I also think that we need both. Sometimes law says yes, but ethics says no. And also we were trying to finalize our ethics principles right before I came here. And we were wondering, do we actually need AI ethics or do we digital ethics? And well, they might be the same, but also a bit different, but still it's going to answer different questions than the actual law.
Yeah, I actually didn't, when I started studying this, so I never even thought about ethical AI. I mean, it being talked about, because I actually thought when you have all the fairness, non-biased, etc., that's pretty much all goes under the umbrella ethics. And I again think, you heard, I'm not a big fan of regulation. If we start to have ethical AI acts, I mean, then we have to rewrite our criminal laws. Why should we have here ethics, but not in those laws? I also think that the ethics comes from the company values, etc. For example, in those companies where I'm in the board and chairman, always when there comes an questionnaire, we have a couple of military air forces wants to buy stuff, we have always said no if they can't prove what the purpose is. So it really comes from the company values. I would say I think it's possible to make ethics as a law. I don't see that.
Yeah, I think really good points there. Definitely, I would personally think also that law is different than ethics. It's a different thing, obviously, and you can't regulate everything. And of course, it depends. If we would take this legislation and put it to another country, they might, even with the legislation, let's say, considering what are the important parameters where we need to think about if someone is biased or something is ethical or not, they might change based on just on the different country that the law would be setting. So there's, of course, Europe has similar kind of values in a way, we can see them. There are these similarities, but if we would go somewhere else, it might be adapted slightly different.
Well, I think when you go to a couple of countries in EU, I think the ethics is a little different also. So.
Sure. One question that is here, and I think this is actually quite interesting. So from Timo, from your presentation, we saw quite different figures for what would be considered as high risk than in Meeri's presentation. So what do you think is the cause there?
I think, as I said, that I think it's a prestige things for the startups. They see high risk as mission critical and super deep technology. So nobody wants to, if you have a scale which goes like this, nobody wants to be on a scale here. You always want to be here because it always goes from 0 to 100, and nobody wants to be kind of. I think it's a little bit of a psychological when you haven't studied what these differences really are. That's my gut feeling.
I just want to briefly comment because we used as a source the same study, and the fact is that have a look at that study, but people are not very familiar with the act as itself when responding to this one. So it's really hard, but it's very hard to even even if you knew it very well, because there are still open questions regarding the categories, and for example, this general purpose systems can totally change the numbers if it's there or not. So I guess it's relatively difficult to say the exact figures at this point, but a lot of this variation also varies due to the fact that people have different background on actually familiarizing what are the requirements and categories.
Yeah, and something I realized quite a bit working with GDPR and then working in a big bank after that. So what really happens is that some of these requirements or these thought requirements in an organization are not actual requirement from any regulation. They somehow these things become like memes and they are just believed in. So these kind of things can happen that people realize something or they create this kind of an organizational belief that something, let's say something is high risk or, so I think you have to be really wary when implementing these, that these kind of wrong thoughts don't.
I would like to challenge everyone in this room not to spread those memes, but actually have a look how it is and let's get this correct, because it's really harmful if we're sharing wrongful or figures and points of views that are not based on the, and I don't say there cannot be opinions, no one knows exactly what are the figures, but let's seek for truth and check our figures when spreading the memes or discussions about this topic.
Yeah, I can't agree more, but the hard thing here is actually that this came up with GDPR, for example. So it came into effect. We started to implement it, and we had a lot of questions on what does this mean. So if we do it like this, are we going to be in trouble? And the kind of overall response was that, well, we don't know until some court takes a stand. So do something and pray for the best. That's a very hard thing to do for, Nordic people, with for banks and so forth. So we tend to be very cautious. And I'm afraid that something similar will happen with respect to the AI Act. So it's going to be vague anyways. So how far are we going to be willing to take risks in terms of interpretation so that we won't end up in court?
Good. So last question, and this is to all of you. So what are the next steps organizations should take towards compliance with the EU AI Act, or not only compliance, but related to this? So what would be the next steps you would advise organizations to do now or in the near future?
Read the AI Act. I mean, I read the GDPR, but not 4 years ago when I should have, but more like 2 years ago when I really got stuck up with something, and after reading it I realized a number of things. So with the AI Act is the same thing. Read it through.
I worked with a lot of consultants and people who worked on GDPR and never had read the GDPR. So I really cannot echo more. Overall, I think education is the thing that we need to focus on this year and probably next year and a couple more years as well. So after reading it, let's start educating ourselves first and then our organizations, and then of course not only what does it say, but how can we get started. But I think this understanding about these problems and the solutions to those is the key here.
As I told, we are preparing those AI data and AI ethics principles. So this is kind of the first step to understand what we could do with AI. And when the AI Act actually comes in a few years, it's taking quite a lot of time. So we are prepared to understand more about the actual AI. And also we need skills. We need data scientists who can understand the actual AI and how it works. Because if we don't in our organization at all understand that, we can't actually buy nothing without trusting to the supplier. So we need the skills in our own organization as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had it in my presentation that I mean, this AI Act will come, although you would like it or not, and that's why you also have to study. But I would say, especially those startups who this concerns, I would, when you have persons still in the IQ 130 to 170, they interpret how they want it. So I would also say that I mean, we have specialists here and really take some outsider also to because I think it's much better that people get more executive summaries than try to read the whole text, because you will get lost in translation, pretty sure. And also how you usually motivate the organization is to how that kind of gets your competitive advantage be better, because if it's because that's unfortunately with the EU acts and regulations is that people usually go where the fence is the lowest and get the check in the box. So really think in the management, in the board, that how can we turn this to sales? That's what everybody wants.
Cool, thank you. So we are done with our panel, so let's give big applause to everyone. Ourselves as well. And thank you everyone for joining in and listening to this. So everyone who is here and also everyone in online. So if you're here, please stay for some refreshments. If you have any questions, please come and talk to us. Let's have a nice discussion, and thank you.
Thank you. Joo. Amen.